So my academic background, I am a clinical psychologist by training. I worked in Italy with migrants and refugees in an association called Associazione France Fanon in Turin in Italy. And from this, I studied a master's in medical anthropology at the University of Amsterdam, which led then to conducting a PhD in physical cultural studies at the University of Bath in the UK. Across this interdisciplinary work and interest, what has been constant has been my focus on bodies, what bodies do, as for example in sport and leisure, as an entry point to address wider and current social issues. In this sense, kind of coming at BU allowed me to explore these interdisciplinary dialogues between academic fields that sometimes they don't really talk to each other, and to kind of provide inputs and hopefully original contributions to discussions that are at the same time scholarly but also go beyond the academic knowledge. And BU is really a place where this is kind of encouraged, and this is kind of, I felt encouraged to do so at BU. So first of all, I think the domain of sport and leisure can provide sometimes unexpected but very useful again perspective to look at forced migration. First of all, because we tend to not to see in forced migrants or refugees having much time or possibility to dedicate to leisure, and understandably most of the focus when looking at these issues is about housing, employment, education, but actually part of the research that are conducted, but also the research that have been conducted in collaborations with other scholars, have been showing how leisure is, as much as it is part of our everyday lives and shaping our everyday lives, and the relevance that it has in our lives, is as relevant for people before migrating and also when resettling in their hopefully new homes, new countries. So in this sense, looking at how people who are seeking asylum have access to leisure opportunities or not, and the way they understand leisure opportunities, sport opportunities beyond the frames that we're used to look at these domains, can be very useful then to understand processes of resettlement or belonging, and how they happen from the perspective of people who migrate and seek asylum. Recently, the domain of sport and forced migration have actually increased much more associations, much more relevance. We just seen now in the Olympic Games, the International Olympic Committee have created a refugee team. But also the European Commission have invested millions of euros in looking at how sport can represent a source for integration. Similarly, this has happened in Australia. The UNHCR is actually have published a toolkit on how to use sport in context of displacement and forced migration. So we are seeing an increase of interest. So this kind of making the point for the relevance of leisure and sport as kind of has brought to an extent to this increased interest. This doesn't mean though that we don't need now to still look closely at the role of sport and leisure in the lives of people seeking asylum. That mostly because in the domain of sport and leisure there are two main tendencies. One is to associate sport as this kind of magic domain through which every tensions, every conflict in society can be solved, and we all know very well that this is not true. So we need to pay attention to the conditions in which sporting experiences and practices take place, and also because the way we tend to look, especially in the global north, at leisure and sport in relation to forced migration is a very functional way. So how sport can be useful to increase refugees' health or integration or employment of opportunities, we kind of fail to see how, again, the conditions of access, the experiences might go well beyond this kind of frame that we kind of create. Throughout my own approach to the topic, it's important for me to use interdisciplinarity not just as an academic dialogue, but also a dialogue between academics and practitioners. And this has led me to work with organizations working on the ground with refugees and people seeking asylum, personally, directly in Italy and the UK. And these has kind of enabled sorts of knowledge exchanges and dialogues that had the first impact on the way things have been done on the ground, often by making sure that the voices, the experiences of people seeking asylum are part or are shaping the activities put on the ground. I've been working with some international collaborations and scholars, some in Sweden with Malmö University, some in Italy, the University of Turin, and some in Australia at the Western University in Sydney. And I think this is really helping to kind of shape a dialogue that looks at specific issues but also is able to capture global trends in addressing these issues, again, from the ground, from the perspective of sport and leisure. I think it's very important to shape knowledge in dialogue with organizations working on the ground, practitioners, but most importantly also refugees and people seeking asylum. So at the core of this kind of focus of research is really about getting in touch and talking about possibilities to look at this issue. So there would be anyone from organizations that have been working with sport and leisure already on the ground, but that are aiming to look maybe a little bit more critically of what is being done, what could be done in their activities, or people who like to work on these issues, but they have not really don't really know how to start and what approach to take. So there will be anyone from very small grassroots community organizations to more established NGOs or national or international organizations.